dance for joy or lust or anger.
Welcome to Sensible Secondhand Reviews, the series where we look at practical, sensible everyday cars that you can buy between a budget of £1,000 and £5,000. This is a 2017 Ford Ka Plus 1.2 Zetec. But is it any good? Should you care? Let's find out, shall we? So the Ka Plus follows on the tradition of the first two types of Ford Ka, which were released in 1996 and 2008. The first one was based on the platform of the Mark IV Fiesta at the time, and the second one was based on the Fiat 500 that came out in 2007. This one is also based on a Fiesta, a bit like the Mark I, but it's actually the Mark VII Fiesta. This one's based on one that ran in our market from between 2008 to 2017. The engine in this one is also related to the one that powered a majority of those cars. It's a 1.2 Zetec-SE or Zetec or Sigma engine. All three names have been used at various times, in this case generating 85 horsepower. The only other engine when the car was launched in 2016 was available was a 70 brake horsepower version of this engine, and that did 0 to 60 in about 15 seconds. This isn't too much better, it's about 13 seconds, but it's good enough. And you can tell it's the old Zetec-SE engine when you actually rev it up a bit. It's a fantastic engine, this. It was originally co-developed between Ford and Yamaha in the mid-1990s, and the most famous versions of it were 1.25, 1.4, 1.6 and 1.7. 1.7 went into the Ford Puma. This engine has been reduced in capacity a little bit from the 1.25 that powered a lot of the Mark VII Fiestas for some reason, and it feels absolutely fine. It feels really appropriate for this car. When the Ka Plus was facelifted in 2018, they actually switched this engine over for one that was based on the same basic design as the Ford EcoBoost or EcoBoom engine, as some people call it, because they have a tendency for unreliability. Again, a 1.2 unit, 3 cylinders, also generating 70 and 85 horsepower. There are also some diesels available, but as usual, due to controversial government legislation and all kinds of other reasons, we don't talk about diesels on this channel. What we do talk about is the really sweet handling of this Ka Plus. Being based on that Mark VII Fiesta, you'd expect it to handle and ride very well, and of course it does. When I drove a Mark VII Fiesta on the channel, which would have been back in 2021, I was really impressed. In fact, I sourced an identical car to that for a client just the next month, and I really like the Mark VII Fiesta. This car was actually based on the Ford Figo, which is an Indian version of a South American design, which is really weird. But yeah, the Figo and this are based on the Mark VII Fiesta, although this Ka Plus was heavily revised for the European market with all kinds of different things to door seals, suspension, that kind of stuff. It's a shame really that this car didn't last as long as Ford had anticipated, but it didn't sell in the numbers that they expected, and a lot of the cars in the city car class when this was launched, like the Suzuki Celerio and the Vauxhall Viva, were also discontinued along with this car in late 2019. I think some cars were sold into 2020. One thing to address straight away before you all start furiously typing on your keyboards is that there are actually 3 perfectly acceptable pronunciations of Ka. And the Ford press office over the course of many years used all three. You can say KA, Car or Ka. It really doesn't matter. The one that was used most at the beginning was Ka, which is the one that I use, just to get it out of the way. It's like arguing about pronunciation of Van den Plough when there are also three perfectly acceptable pronunciations and none is actually more correct than the other. So it looks a bit taller than a Mark VII Fiesta, although it doesn't look too dissimilar in design. I think it looks absolutely fine. It's not the most stylish car I've ever seen. I think the Ka Plus Active model does look a little bit better. The facelifted cars from 2018 onwards actually got a slightly different way of getting into the boot. I think people complained about the fact that the boot release is either on this key here, and we'll come back to the key a bit later, and we'll just show you how it works by pressing that twice. There we go. So you can open it like that, or there's a button on the dash, but the facelifted cars have a little button on the tailgate as well, so you can open it without having to use the key fob or the button on the dash. So the boot's about 275 litres, I think, something like that. And we've got provision here to have a space saver spare wheel, although this car didn't have that. Just has the inflation kit, which is fine, I suppose, but there we go. Do we actually get a boot light in here? Oh yes, we do. I thought we didn't get a boot light at all, which would be rubbish, but it's not the biggest boot in the world, is it? But it's sort of average for this size of car and enormously bigger than things like the Peugeot 108 and stuff like that. The Volkswagen Up and the Seat Me and the Skoda Citigo, most of which have been discontinued by now, they had a smaller boot than this. The other thing is, there's only space to put the boot underneath from one side, which is interesting. Normally on most cars you get pull either side, depending if you're obviously loading from that curb or that curb. So this particular car actually doesn't have electric rear windows. They were part of an option pack, you know, there were various options. You could get things like heated seats and I think parking sensors, but this one doesn't have that. It's just got the windy windows in the back. But to be fair, a lot of cars in this class, such as the 108 and the iGo and the Citroen C1 and the Seat Me and the Volkswagen Up and the Skoda Citigo, didn't have wind down rear windows at all. They only pop out. It's hilarious to sort of see as well in this car, the interior door handles for the Mark VI Fiesta was launched in 2002. I know that Ford of India kept that one going for a lot longer than we did over here. That car was discontinued in 2008 for our market. So if we just move some of these things out of the way, there we go, and climb in the back, not break that pole thing there. Actually, even though the seat's quite far back in here, there's lots and lots of headroom, and the legroom is all right. You can put your feet underneath there. I mean, obviously the passenger doesn't have to be this tall, and it would be fine. If it was behind my driving position, just there, it would be better. The only thing is there's no sort of door bins or anything, and it does feel just a little bit cheap. There's a little bit of material here. Obviously, I prefer a bit more, but you know, this was a very inexpensive car when it was launched, and you can buy them now for under £5,000. I checked, and I found a couple of them actually on the internet for under £5,000 last night, in fact, which is good. We are within the budget, although this car, given the condition it's in, is worth a little bit more than that. So yeah, proper 3-point seat belts. Headliner feels okay. It does feel a little bit cheaper than the Mark VII, but then, well, it was, so that's not really much of a surprise. It's very easy to get in and out if that seat's not too far back. Doors are massive, actually. So if we get into the front, yes, the mirror switch from the Mark V Fiesta. welcome back. Obviously some other Fords from the 90s and 2000s as well. You could get automatic lights and wipers. This car doesn't have that. Nice and simple physical dials and buttons for the air conditioning. Wonderful. I think you could get climate control. This car doesn't have that. Also, on the post-facelift cars, you could get Ford Sync 3 infotainment system. This doesn't have that. That's an earlier system in there. And you couldn't get a sat-nav, as far as I'm aware, really at all on the pre-facelift cars. But it's all just really simple, and I quite like it. You might have a shiny dash and all sorts of hard-touch, scratchy plastic, but, I mean, everything in this class had hard-touch, shiny, scratchy black plastic at this price. Who cares? One nice feature, we've actually got cruise control in this, which is something I'd forgotten about until I started doing research on this car. The studio trim, which sat below this, most models of this you find would be the Zetec or the Zetec Black and White edition and the Colour edition, which were just some special styling packs you could get with the car. Are quite well equipped. The studio's not, and that's one you actually got with the 70 horsepower engine as well, which would feel very slow. There's that button there, which I was talking about, to release the boot if you don't want to use the key. And actually, talking about this key, if you put it in here, you can actually have several keys programmed to limit the engine power, the top speed, and also the stereo volume if you've got a young driver, for example, who is using this. Quite a few different Fords use that system, but it's nice to have, isn't it? 12-volt socket down there, aux in and USB. Passenger airbag, notification light is there. No centre armrest, but you don't need it, do you? In fact, you can have cup holders. You can have as many cup holders as you like, because there are 4 of them in this car. And there's some in the door bins. There's actually more cup holders in this car than the number of seats, which is brilliant. Piano black material, kind of similar to the Fiesta Mark IV facelift dash, but not exactly the same. In fact, we'll have a look at this little infotainment system, shall we? Okay, so it just says Ford there, connect to a BT device. It is colour, but it is tiny. It looks like you definitely need to upgrade that, otherwise it looks embarrassing, but you know, there we go. It doesn't matter, does it really? Menu, sync settings, radio, hope this didn't go off. Good, keep quiet. I just avoided a copyright infringement there, viewers. So you could get line in, mobile apps, you can go down and have a look at that, and things like that. No Android Auto, Apple CarPlay with this, unfortunately. I think maybe with facelift ones you could get that, not on this. What about the glove box? Do my secret mission documents go in? No. No, they don't. If we take this out, that go in. No. Viewers, I am not unimpressed. We'll have to put it down there. Okay, let's take a look at the engine bay, shall we? Or before we do that, I just noticed this car's got a rear courtesy light. It's amazing. Not even an MG ZS, the EV version, which costs over £30,000, is one of those. But you get one in a Car Plus. You can see what the priorities were for the Indian motorist, can't you? Well, 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 viewers, the good old Zetec-SE stroke Duratec stroke Sigma engine, in this case 1.2 litres rather than 1.25, developing 85 horsepower. These are a timing belt engine. You do need to make sure that that's been done, but other than that, they're pretty solid. You can get water into spark plug tubes on certain cars. I don't know if the Car Plus actually suffers from that. And you can have thermostat housings fail and things like that as well. I've seen that on some of the Mark VI Fiestas and Mark VIIs. But overall, if you look after it, it's very characterful It makes a great noise, and it's quite simple and generally quite easy to fix. I can see why they initially chose this engine to be in this car. Ford family face looks good, although it doesn't look quite as good as, say, the Mark 8 Fiesta, which came out later this year, 2017, and well, sadly it is about to die, which is a shame. This died, and so is the Fiesta. Ford isn't the company that it once was, I'm afraid. Anyway, let's stop moping now and go for another drive. Lloyd Vehicle Consulting stickers, t-shirts and mugs are available by clicking the link to the Google form in the video description below. Just the drive positions are absolutely excellent. The pedals are in a really good position. The seat is in a very good position. The controls are very well laid out. You can tell the difference in interior quality a little bit, and there's some really weird decisions, like this ancient electric mirror switch out of, I think, of a Mark V Fiesta. But overall, it's pretty good. There was also, after the facelift in 2018, a Car Plus Active model with raised suspension, and that came with an engine that we can't talk about as an option, but yes, it also had the 1.2 3-cylinder in addition to that particular one we can't discuss. So yeah, it just feels really good. It feels very spacious in here. The city car rivals like the Viva and the Celerio are much smaller than this. You'd expect, being based on that Fiesta platform, that it would be a bit larger than those, and it is. In fact, actually, when this car came out, it would have made the Mark VII look a little bit overpriced, because it's got, actually, in some ways, more space than one of those, but for less money. Although the interior quality is not quite as nice as one of those. But it's just a shame that cars like this just don't sell in very big numbers anymore, because you know, it's the sort of thing that everyone's looking for these days. A nice, spacious car with low running costs, which is nice to drive. And you know, this ticks all the boxes in that regard. So viewers, should you consider a Ford Car Plus in Studio Zetec or Car Plus Active specification with your hard-earned budget of between £1,000 and £5,000? Well, I don't see why not. I mean, they're such simple cars, these, and they've got, for the most part, quite proven technology in them, and they're surprisingly nice to drive. The running costs should be quite low. I think the Studio with 70 horsepower is in Group 1 for insurance, which is just amazing. It's such a shame that Ford have not only discontinued this, but also the Fiesta, because I think there's still quite a market for cars like this, even if manufacturers don't want to make them anymore, because they don't make them a lot of money. Anyway, thank you ever so much indeed once again for watching this episode of Sensible Secondhand Reviews. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave a comment below. Thank you again to Simon, Langley Prestige and Chelmsford for the loan of this car, and we shall see you again soon for more reasonably priced motoring.